Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Season Ticket Holders. I'm your host, Dane Lillingstone, and I have a very special and new guest with us today. He is an NRL sideline reporter, host of UFC Fight Week on Fox Sports and KO, a main event presenter and reporter, and he once raced Tom Aspinall around Central Park. Niko Pajarillo, how are you going, mate?
I'm slightly worse off after that little sledge, but that's okay. I'm all good. Dano, thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Niko, I know that was a bit of an inside joke, but that was one of the best. That was a cool story that you did do with Tom Aspinall jogging around Central Park. Can you just give us the background for that a little bit?
Yeah, so we were in New York last year for UFC 309, I believe, and we were trying to promote the John Jones Stipe Miocic fight at Madison Square Garden, and the big story around that was the interim champion Tom Aspinall, who was of course in waiting, and it's very odd that and very rare that you see a champion defend the belt not against the interim champion, but that's what took place at UFC 309. So a big story around it was Tom Aspinall and the fact that he was just waiting in the wings, and his presence there, kind of like the Sir Alex Ferguson in the stands when Mourinho was not performing as well at Manchester United. It was kind of that vibe. So we thought it might be a good idea to have a chat with the interim champ, and we always try and do things differently at Fox Sports, rather than sit in front of a backdrop like I'm doing right now with a couple of microphones. So Nick Lockyer, our executive producer, had the idea for us to go for a run around Central Park, because what is quintessentially New York, right? You're traveling all over the world to interview these fighters and these athletes. You want to show that you're there. You don't just want to. This could be anywhere, right? In front of a backdrop or in front of a wall. So we thought, hey, Central Park. It doesn't get much more New York than that. So I did. It's fair to say that the internet did not enjoy my running gait. But look, that's a story for another day.
Mate, the story looked and came out great, and he relaxed. He was a really good talent. How many heavyweight champions of the world would have even said yes to that? So you did an amazing job, I think, by getting that. Now, mate, when we get guests on for the first time, I just want you to just give us a quick little overview for people who don't know who you are, what got you into MMA, and why you love the UFC.
Well, my name's Niko Pajarillo. I'm from Mount Druitt out in Western Sydney, for those of you who are familiar. I always wanted to be a journalist. I always wanted to work on NRL. You can't really grow up in Western Sydney and not be a rugby league fan. So I went to school out of Parramatta. That's how I fell in love with my Parramatta Eels, which has sort of been a blessing and a curse throughout my life. But I eventually, while doing my journalism degree at uni, found my way to Channel 9 and eventually Fox Sports, where I've remained ever since. And, I've always been a sports lover, even before all that. I think I would have been in high school at the time. Yeah, maybe like year 10, year 11, when I sort of first got exposed to the UFC. There was a guy named George St. Pierre who was a legend of the sport already. And he was just he looked like, I remember saying he looked like a Mortal Kombat character, or like a Tekken character or whatever.
Yeah, good
He was
call.
just that perfectly built and fought that perfectly. So he's sort of what got me into it. And then from then on, MMA has just been certainly one of my favorite sports. And already having been a boxing fan, being Filipino, it was sort of a natural progression from that into the Ronda Rousey era, perfectly into the Conor McGregor era, and then eventually into the COVID area, where a lot of fans jumped onto the sport. So it's certainly, we've seen the sport grow from strength to strength, and it's been great to be a part of that.
And mate, as any UFC fan out there who doesn't know, you basically live the dream, because you get to go to Vegas and Abu Dhabi, and you said about New York, and you get to follow these fighters. You get to have Alexander Volkanovski and Rob Whittaker, two of our biggest ever exports in MMA, rubbing shoulders with them. Do you sometimes have to pinch yourself, mate, that you do get to be in that position?
You know what, Dane? It's like anybody in the world. You need to. I've focused a lot on practicing gratitude, because like you say, I saw a post the other day where it was like, your every day is somebody's dream, and man, you just got to ground yourself every day, whether or not you're religious. You just got to count your blessings and practice gratitude and be grateful for what you have every day. Truly, it's literally the best job in the world. I mean, we're here. Looking ahead to another big fight this evening, which I'm sure we'll talk about in the aftermath. But it's just, it's so awesome to be able to cover sports that you love and to do anything that you love. So yeah, I'm so blessed to be able to do it.
100%, mate. You're looking sharp tonight as well, so you are ready to go for the
I don't know
boxing.
how live this is, so I don't know if we can talk about what might happen, but I'm sure by the time your viewers tune in, they'll know the results of the Nikita Zululzum Ismaili fight that's about to take place.
Exciting one. I can't wait to see mother's milk and placenta. There's plenty of storylines going in with Nikita there, mate. But I did get you on because I do want to break down with you UFC 319 on the weekend. It ended in one of the most one-sided title fights from a challenger in recent memory. Khamzat Chimaev dominating the champion over 5 rounds. He was the favourite going in. Nico, I have plenty of thoughts on this, but I do want to get your thoughts first, mate. How special was this performance by Chimaev to come in there and completely dominate the champion? He got a takedown after 7 seconds and basically didn't look back.
He was brilliant. I thought the whole fight was brilliant. In fact, I want to go a step further and say the entire card for UFC, 319, was fantastic. That main card especially. I think there were 3 stoppage victories that started out with a submission. We got 2 spinning elbow knockouts, which I believe were the 9th and 10th in UFC history. Absolutely remarkable. So that means that 20% of all spinning elbow knockouts occurred within an hour of each other. It was absolutely staggering. And that Michael Venom Page, Jared Cannonier fight was remarkable as well. So, first of all, hats off to the UFC for putting on a great event. In terms of the main fight, the much anticipated fight between Dricus Du Plessis and Khamzat Chimaev, I was saying that this, like, throughout the entire lead up, was the biggest fight of the year, right? We didn't get Jones Aspinall. We didn't get Islam Ilya. That might happen in 2026. So this fight was kind of the last bucket list fight remaining. And for mine, while it didn't necessarily live up to maybe the exciting expectations we had for it, I thought that the masterclass that Khamzat Chimaev put on was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in a UFC octagon. We expected Khamzat to be able to dominate for 1, maybe 2 rounds, but for a 25-minute performance, I'd never seen anything like that against a champion who is as big and powerful as Dricus Du Plessis. You remember he fought Kamaru Usman in Abu Dhabi. I was lucky enough to cover that event on the ground in 2023. And Khamzat was very, very impressive that evening, being able to control Kamaru Usman for that first round. And he threatened a number of submissions as well. He did the same with Dricus Du Plessis, but I figured that because Dricus is so much bigger, he's so much stronger, he could fight at light heavyweight, Dana. So I didn't know that he'd be able to carry that on for more than 2 rounds. To do it for 5 was absolutely unbelievable. Technically, it was a joy to watch, looking at what he was able to do on the ground. Constantly threatening submissions, and a credit as well where it's due to the former champion, Dricus Du Plessis. I thought he defended astutely on the ground, being able to fight for overhooks constantly to protect his neck, and also, to negate the threat of submission. I know that that's been a criticism of Khamzat Chimaev in the aftermath of that fight, that he didn't attempt submissions. He did. He absolutely did. He was pushing for submissions for as long as the fight went on. So credit to Dricus for being able to survive that, but also credit to Khamzat for being able to push through that pace for that long.
You're 100% right, mate. And Dricus does need to get credit because he did defend, right? It's not like Chimaev wasn't going for submission, had him in that crucifix. He is known for his chokes as well, but he just couldn't get the job done. I was pretty impressed with Dricus' defense. But, mate, is there anyone, I guess the question is there anyone who can defend Chimaev's wrestling? Putting him in that crucifix as well. I know a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class instructor talked about the other day. Like, he obviously was trying to get out of it. There's plenty of moves, and I'm sure Dricus had an idea of how to get out of it, but just the fact that he couldn't. My real question is, with the wrestling, the relentless pressure that he put in, is there anyone in this division that can do it? Because we've seen Kamaru Usman, he pushed him into deep waters. If that had gone 5 rounds, maybe that was a different story. Gilbert Burns, I think, before him. But other than that, Chimaev's never really looked troubled. Is there someone who can combat this wrestling and this relentless grappling and the pressure that he puts on you?
Yes, I think so. And I'm glad that you mentioned Kamaru Usman once again, because you remember that he did very well in that fight, as you mentioned, but also in that Gilbert Burns fight. And you have to remember, these are 2 welterweights. I understand that Khamzat Chimaev was also a welterweight at the time, but you're coming up against bigger guys, and I think it speaks to just how impressive it was once again to do it against Dricus Du Plessis, who is, in my opinion, a future light heavyweight. But I think I would love to see I understand that the Nasruddin Imavov versus Caio Borralho fight in Paris in only a couple of weeks' time is likely a number one contender fight. The UFC doesn't these days promote things as number one contender fights, but I would wager that the winner of that bout gets the next shot at Khamzat. And Dana White announced today that Fluffy Hernandez would be taking on Rainier Derrida, of course, the man who recently defeated our guy, Robert Whittaker. And that, in all honesty, is the fight that I'm most excited to see. Rainier Derrida with his very strong offensive jiu-jitsu game. I would like to see how he matches up against a grappler like Khamzat Chimaev, how he manages to take care of his wrestling. I think the fact that he's so good and he's so adept at attacking submissions from the bottom position and in the scrambles, I think makes for a fascinating matchup. But the fact that he has to come up against Anthony Hernandez is a massive if and also a massive task for him. So that's the fight that I'd be most excited to see. Not that I don't think Nasruddin Imavov or Caio Borralho couldn't take him on, but I'd just be more intrigued to see the grappling specialist come up against Khamzat.
Fair call, mate. I just think after watching that performance and how dominant he's been, even the way he got up into Dricus's face at the stare-off at the beginning of the fight, he gets in your head, and he is the boogeyman, right? We call him that. He is the boogeyman of the division, and, man, I don't know who's going to be able to combat that wrestling, because the way he even, I think that was that moment in the third or fourth round where he got back up and just got dragged straight back down again. That has to be demoralizing, man. And even
and just on that as well, like, that was outrageous. It was a Mark Goddard, the referee, standing them up when there was plenty of action on the ground. There's plenty of activity there. I thought that was ridiculous to be able to do that or to stand them up at that moment. But thankfully for Khamzat, he was able to take him down with relative ease immediately after that. But yeah, there would have definitely been some complaints if that had led to a finish in the other direction.
I was going to say, it was almost like a backyard fight. They would have stood that up. You know what I mean? Not in a mixed martial arts professional fight where he was doing exactly what he wanted to do with him. So yeah, that's going to be interesting, man, how that title picture plays out. Now, I did just want to touch on that, the co-main with Lerone Murphy, and we did touch on it, that spinning back elbow. Now, that's going to have big implications as well for our boy, Alexander Volkanovski, potentially. He's come out and said some things post-fight. Where do you see, you get to talk to Volk pretty regularly, where do you see Volk, where his head's at with that title defense, and who do you think it'll be next?
Alexander Volkanovski at this stage in his career, especially this year, is itching to fight anybody. He will literally fight anybody. If either of us suited up, he'd take on one of us for the featherweight championship.
You're going to fight him there, Nico?
Well, let me tell you, he's that excited to get in there. I remember I spoke to Aaron Pico in the lead up to this fight just this past weekend, and he said he'd be confident in knocking out Alexander Volkanovski. I got Volk's reaction to it. And he was keen. He was fired up. He was like, "Oh, let's do it." You know, he was down to fight Pico. Unfortunately, it's for Aaron, it's gone the other way. But I think that just shows you the mentality of Alex Volkanovski. The fact that he'd be willing to give a title shot to a UFC newcomer, a guy who had not even made his debut within the promotion, who was not even a champion in a competing promotion. Like we all know of his accolades in Bellator. He was never a belt holder there. But credit to Aaron Pico. He was a fantastic fighter, but Lerone Murphy is the one who stole all the headlines. And I think Volk, despite the fact that Lerone was ranked number 6, despite the fact that he had come off 5 straight decision victories, we'll look at that opportunity and take it with both hands. Because right now, Volk reminds me of around the time of the pandemic when he was just itching for a number one contender. And Lerone Murphy certainly stamped his spot. And I think you go out there and you do something like that, I think it's you stamp your ticket if you can pull off as Dana White puts, a holy shit moment like that.
I was going to say that was certainly a holy shit moment, mate. And back-to-back spinning elbows on the main card. What a crazy turn of events. Mate, he's 17-0-1. That only blemish was a draw back in 2019. Like you did mention, he had a handful of decisions before that, but he is known for a knockout. Did have the lot earlier in his career, so that'll be one to watch. You get to speak to Volk. What's your gut feeling about when he'll fight? We've obviously just talked about he'd fight anyone, but what's your gut feeling and when we'll see him back in the octagon again?
He'll fight in December in Las Vegas is my gut feeling. That has sort of been, I feel, the target for Volk's big return. If you look at like just via process of elimination, that's kind of the perfect time for a featherweight title fight to take place. Whether it is Movsar Evloev, let's not forget, it may very well be him. I don't know that he's necessarily in the good graces of everybody involved. However, if you are to look for a featherweight title slot, I feel December is where it's at. In fact, I think Alexander Volkanovski might have replied to Lerone Murphy or put it out there. Featherweight title fight in December. Dana White in his post-fight press conference says, I love it. So it's looking like the Christmas card will be one that's very interesting to Australians in the desert of Las Vegas. So gear up for that. And, it's funny because like a few weeks before that, we've got the big fight at Madison Square Garden, potentially being booked right now between Islam Makhachev and Jack Della Maddalena. So, a big end to the year, certainly right here on Foxtel's Main Event.
Mate, Aussie fight fans, get ready. Volk did come out and say that it's a no-brainer for him to fight Murphy next. Mate, the other one I want to just touch on then as well for you as far as Aussie fighters, we mentioned DeRidder and Robert Whittaker. Where do you see our boy Rob now going from here? Obviously, this middleweight division is pretty murky. There's plenty of big contenders. It's hard to see him getting back into this title picture now at the moment. Where do you think what's next for Rob?
I spoke to Rob 2 weeks out from his fight against Rainier DeRidder before he left for Abu Dhabi. And Rob said he had 4 fights left in his career, 4 fights before retirement. He could see the path back to the belt, back to gold, and to finish with a fairy tale ending. Because he lost that split decision, I wonder if that's still his plan. I have spoken to him since, but I didn't really ask him about what his retirement plans are. I might save that for another day when it's a bit less raw. But yeah, he had a 4-fight plan, I imagine, to beat DeRidder, to beat a number 1 contender, maybe to fight for the belt and defend it once. That's just me postulating. I wonder if I don't know that he's necessarily lost all that much credit though. Like losing to a guy like Rainier, who only beat him by a split decision, who was criticized a lot for the glove grabs during that fight, who nearly got finished in that 3rd round. I don't think Rob Whittaker loses a lot of stock. I think you could book a Rob versus a Sean Strickland or one of those contenders sort of in the top 5, 6. And it would make a whole lot of sense. And if he wins that, well, he's straight back into the picture, isn't he? So I think he could still have another 4 fights, maybe even 3, and still somehow work out a path to the belt. I don't think it's out of the realms of possibility. And certainly we know how good a fighter he is. It's unfortunate the way the Khamzat Chimaev fight panned out last October. He doesn't like making any excuses. I do. I feel like if he had gotten his teeth fixed before that fight, he very well could have given himself more of a chance in that fight. But having seen the results of the last weekend, maybe not. Maybe there's nobody stopping Khamzat. But I think Robert Whittaker is still very much a capable fighter, and I think he's certainly got a chance at becoming UFC middleweight champion.
That's fair. I mean, watching that DeRidder fight, like you said, almost finishing the 3rd and a little bit more activity in that 4th and 5th, mate, he would have won that fight. That was a very close fight. I think he could have definitely snatched that at the end. What is the dream fight right now? I just want to get you, Nico. Ilia Topuria. We want to see him again. He's been an absolute stunner. Makhachev. Are we going to see this fight one day? That's the golden goose fight to make in the UFC?
Yeah, look, that's the biggest fight the UFC can make at the moment, with John Jones announcing his retirement and teasing a comeback. I don't know that many UFC fans nor UFC brass are putting much stock into that. So I think the biggest fight the UFC can make right now is Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria. Islam wants to move up. He is moving up to welterweight. He's relinquished the belt at 155. He's likely going to fight Jack Della Maddalena in New York in only a couple of months' time. And so much hinges on that, right? Have a shot at becoming a 2-division world champion by fighting Ilia Topuria. Ilia could do the same thing. Could they meet both as champions, as welterweight king and also as lightweight king? That would be a hell of a matchup. But if Jack Della Maddalena beats him, I wonder if any of maybe the juice from that fight is taken away. I don't know if I believe so. I think that regardless of results in this Jack Della Maddalena fight, a fight between Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev is as big and is still the biggest fight the UFC can make. And like it's the stuff of dreams, It's one of the 3 big fights, as I mentioned, we were looking forward to in 2025.
When do you think that Della Maddalena fight will get locked in?
I predict very, very soon. Over the next few weeks. And from my understanding, it's very close to being a reality. And gee, wouldn't it be something special, right? It's the story writes itself, right? Another Aussie taking on Islam Makhachev, moving up in weight. I understand why the UFC let him do that, right? Because he did the UFC so many favors, right? He fought Volk not only once. He had to he wanted to defend it against 55. As you say, I want to fight big guys. I don't want to fight small guys. But they granted Volk the chance to move up to 155 pounds. And Islam was able to dispatch of him. He agreed to fight Charles Oliveira, agreed to rematch Volk on short notice, beat Dustin Poirier, an absolute legend. Was supposed to fight Arman Sarukian, supposedly his biggest challenge to date. Then Renato Moicano filled in on late notice, and he said, "Yep, no problem. I'll do it. I'm the champ. I'll fight anybody anywhere." So he's definitely in the UFC's good graces. He's done a lot for the company, and I think the company feels indebted to him, thus allowing him to move up to 170 pounds and achieve his dream of becoming a 2-division world champion. But for our guy Jack, wanting to get revenge for Volk, following those 2 losses, I think is an incredible story. And it's sort of, you don't know if this Goliath of Makhachev, champion Makhachev, will ever be slayed. But gee, if our guy was the guy to do it, it would be absolutely stunning.
Land down under, playing through all the pubs on a Sunday afternoon. Wouldn't get any better for Aussie fight fans, mate. And by the sound of it, it's going to be a massive finish to the year. Nico, before I let you go too, I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit on, if we cast our mind back, who's your favourite fighter of all time? And I want you to give us your GOAT.
My favorite UFC fighter of all time. Well, let me start out with the easy one. I think the greatest fighter of all time is John Jones. Just with what he was able to do in that light heavyweight division, the amount of title defenses he was able to amass, and some of the finishes that he pulled off was absolutely incredible. I understand that with him and Anderson Silva, there's a bit of conjecture over, the drug tests and whatnot. But if we're taking that into consideration, I don't think there can be any doubt over the bloke that I mentioned a little earlier, George St. Pierre, from Canada. What he was able to do similarly, he's on my Mount Rushmore, 100%, and I would say that he's probably the greatest of all time. If we're taking John Jones out of the equation, in terms of my favorite fighter, I don't know. It's sort of like you want to root for all the Aussies, right? And all the Aussies, because you and I know them, we speak to them relatively frequently. You develop relationships with them and you root for them. But if we're taking like personal links out of the equation, I don't know. I never really thought about that.
Well, I put you on the spot, mate. I didn't think it'd be that hard.
No.
Mine's Anderson Silva. That's mine. That's my favorite fighter.
Anderson, yeah, I think Anderson's one of the. I think he's the greatest, though he's certainly up there. In terms of my favorite to watch, who's not an Aussie, I'm gonna go with Mark Hunt. How about that?
Really?
It was always a joy to watch. Whenever he came in, it's always like, okay, he's not somebody that I know really personally. He's not somebody that I've spoken to a whole lot. But the guy representing a lot of us, and he was just so fun to watch. And he was sort of your everyday man in many ways. I always liked watching Mark fight.
You knew you were going to get a show. Well, someone's going down, basically, mate.
That's right.
And Nico, I just want to quickly touch on too. We got plenty of Aussie fight fans. The news recently, we did go on to a little bit in the last episode, but the news recently about the Paramount deal and everything that's happening with the UFC in Las Vegas. Now, you obviously work for all the coverage here in Australia. Nothing's going to change in the foreseeable future as far as KO, main event, Foxtel, and how we consume our UFC down here.
No, I don't imagine so. I believe that that Paramount Plus deal is a US exclusive deal, so everything elsewhere remains the same. Canada, here, New Zealand, I know plenty of people consume, plenty of Kiwis consume the UFC via our friends over at Sky there. So nothing to change in the meantime, but it'll be interesting to see what happens the next time around. From what I understand, there is when all the international deals are up, there is a 30-day exclusive negotiating period, a negotiating window for Paramount Plus, if I'm not mistaken there. So that could be an interesting spanner in the works. But as for right now, fight fans in Australia need not go anywhere. We've got everything right here on Main Event and KO Sports.
You can tune in and see Nico's handsome face whenever you want, guys. Make sure you watch and follow and support us there as well. Nico, it's been a pleasure to have you on, mate. Have you got any big trips coming up? What's going to be your next big overseas trip?
Well, we're all waiting on the news that we just spoke about, isn't it? Like once that Jack Della versus Islam fight gets announced, I would be very surprised if Fox Sports wasn't on the ground covering the event as best we could, because it will truly be an historic occasion, not only for Australian fight fans, but also I think in the history of Australian sport.
Well, there you go, folks. You have it there. Niko Pajarillo has done a great job with Main Event, Fox Sports, KO, you name it, all over the fight game in Australia. Always very informative and always a pleasure to chat to you. We both love our UFC in the Fox Sports office, so we always get to chat a lot of shit sometimes, but it's plenty of fun having you. So, Niko, enjoy the rest of the year.
I always feel like I'm distracting everybody in the office when I come in, and whenever I'm in the news studio talking shit, Dano's there putting together something really, really important, whether it be for AFL or NRL, and all I want to do is talk fights. But I'll try and ease up on that a little bit.
Don't even start, mate. You know I love my UFC, right? I love the fights, mate. I'm about to go to BJJ training as we speak, so no, I love it, mate. You're about to have a big host night out there with Nikita Tszyu, so I hope that all goes well, mate. And thank you very much for joining us on Season Ticket Holders.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Pleasure being on the show. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks for your time.
Thanks a lot, Nico. We'll have to get you back one of those travel ones soon. So thanks a lot, everyone, for your support. Follow us on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. Love your support. Appreciate your time. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.